that's why that creates this whole big dissatisfaction within you, and then it comes across when that person dissatisfies you. How are you towards that person?
Nasty.
Nasty. Right? So that means, the minute you become nasty, do you really earn their respect? No. In fact, the person begins to resent you. Even if the person had respect for you to begin with, the person begins to resent you. So you see how through your own mental model you are creating distortions, and you are what? Increasing those distortions, when actually when you have this feeling of what, and you are totally oblivious what you are doing. You only have this feeling of entitlement and how great you are. Okay? And that way of interacting with others, when you make them dissatisfied and if you're nasty towards them, and you get less and less of their respect, and you are more and more dissatisfied because you want more and more respect, and the way you think the respect has to be given to you. Now, what is any success that you have in this world? Is it only you who works towards that success? No. If you are a CEO of a company, how many people work to make those figures for 10% profit or whatever your targets are? How many people work to make it happen?
Millions.
Huh?
Millions.
Millions. First of all your employees, starting from your person who brings you tea when there is a conference, to the person who is making your marketing decisions and the finance decision and all. And they all have to work, not only they have to be very good at what they are doing, but they have to work in harmony with what? So many others. Exactly. Now imagine in that hierarchy, each one who has power over the others is arrogant. CEO is arrogant and puts all the marketing manager and finance and the HR down and just gives orders. So with reference to them, these people, they feel helpless and they have to at least show respect, because this is how they survive in the company. Because this CEO has a huge ego, so they have to feed that ego in order for them to survive. But what are they carrying within that? Resentment. Now that resentment they can't show towards the higher up. So where does it come out? In their subordinates. So now they become arrogant with reference to who? The subordinates. So they feel, so now they will create one whole big chain of dissatisfaction. The CEO demands respect and makes the managers or directors do whatever he wants without giving them due respect. They in turn feel resentful, and they pass on their frustration towards their subordinates. And they do that to whom? Subordinates. Because there is a hierarchy. So everyone passes on. They have to give respect and show respect as though respect to all the people who are higher up, and then they take out the frustrations when they pass it down. So in that kind of a system where everybody contributes towards a goal, what kind of a system is this? What system have you created?
Dissonant.
Totally dysfunctional system.
Organization won't last.
Exactly. The organization cannot last. And even if it is, while it is lasting, what is happening? How is each individual who's coming to work every day, how is that individual feeling? When you're feeling what? That's why this day and age, people spend so much time at workplace, but why? They get all stressed out. Okay. So therefore, I had a person who was working with an ad company who is a creative person, creative director. So he says, before these multinationals and all came, ad was like amazing. You have this amazing creativity and you're left to explore whatever and come up with all these brilliant things. And now these multinationals, they pay a lot. So that's the way they lure good talents. But they give you so many assignments and they all have to be finished. So he says it's almost like, your creative mind is so conditioned, and it's the so-called client pleasing, and then you have too many assignments. He says, what happens to your creativity? It is highly curbed. It's highly curbed, and still you are pushed and pushed because everybody wants something more and more creative to compete with other firms. So he says, you find that what was amazing pleasure has become like a torture. So we create through creating systems which don't respect people, which don't give them space to grow and explore. What have we done? We have made ourselves miserable. This is why we lure them with more and more money, so therefore they can buy a nice house, they maybe can afford cars, but in terms of their own well-being, how do they feel? And then, when they come home, a lot of this frustration is what? Passed on to the family members. Right? So this demanding respect, the distortions that it creates, and the kind of, the kind of dysfunctional systems they create, it is incredible. Now, the CEO, if you keep telling that, oh, you have to be humble, you have to respect others and all of that, then what? It will go in 1 year and it will be when he says, yeah, but I have to meet my targets, I have this and I have this, and therefore they listen with 1 year and they take it out. But as Tushar was saying, if you make them recognize the fact that their own profit in the long run is dependent upon how others are feeling. So that means if they, with their own free will, are creating distortions in the system which get then percolated to the entire system, are they, how is it going to benefit that company, or is it going to be detrimental to its success in the long run? It is going to be detrimental. When you recognize that, then you understand that by being arrogant, you are what? Acting against your own self-interest. It's not an advice. You be like that, you be like that. You be like that remains an advice. But when somebody analyzes it and makes you see, by being this, what you want is the company to be successful. But what you are actually doing through your action is, in the long run, what? Not contributing towards success of the company. And this is why you can see, increase your perspective a little bit. Any system which doesn't have a strong foundation, over 2-3 generations, what happens? Collapses. Big business houses, which seem like, that nothing is going to shake, they all collapse. Because those distortions, when they percolate and it cannot. And then what we do, when they don't meet targets, instead of trying to solve the fundamental problem, we put more pressures. If your estimated or whatever desired profit is 10%, and if it is dropped to 8%, then what? You push your people more and you create more resentment. Right? So that means how critical it is for people to recognize it's not for obliging others. It's not that I want to be nice to others by this, it's not that. It's your own self-interest. You're acting, then you create a distortion. And that human being who is subject to that whatever, that resentment, that will spread that resentment all around. And you are creating systemic failures. Right? So therefore, what is a good strategy? I have a very successful businessman. He said, very early in my life, I recognized that whoever is working for me, I have to respect them. And they have to feel free to express what they want, say what they think. Whether I take their ideas or not is my prerogative, because I am the boss. But I don't want people to feel fear. Because that fear, the position of fear, and then wanting to give respect means what you don't say what you want to say. That kind of a thing will lead to I'm not utilizing the potential of people to the maximum. So he said, I started giving respect and people started feeling free to come and talk to me. And I started compensating them generously. And he says that has brought my organization started as a SME, and now it has grown so much because my way of interacting was totally different. And he says, I recognized it when the company was just growing. How important are my employees for me to grow, and I need to make them feel good and not be afraid. Right? And that is what recently I was reading one thing by Steve Jobs, when he was saying that, when I pay all these employees very high salaries to come and work for me, I'm not paying them to tell them what to do. I'm paying them to know from them what I should do. Because I'm paying so much for their talent, their thinking, and then what am I doing? I'm highly underutilizing their talents if I just keep on being this authoritarian leader who just keeps telling people what to do. He says, actually I paid them to use their talent, so I have to learn from them what I should do. That's why they are well paid. Look at this whole revolution in thinking. And that is what? Not as though I'm being nice. It is just, this is how the system works. If you want to, If you want to be successful, you have to understand how the world works. And you have to align your actions with reference to how the world works. The natural tendency is something different. You have to recognize the distortions in this tendency and you have to undo it. This is what we call command. Because for anything that you have, if you're not a CEO, you're just a housewife or whatever you want to do, you need cooperation of lots of people to make anything happen. You're a housewife and you want to organize a dinner. You need cooperation of what? All your employees, all your servants, all your cooks, all your everyone. And if you are just kind of, looking down and shouting and this and that and creating fear, are they going to really do whatever they are doing from their heart? Absolutely. I was told, I had a friend who went to this restaurant school in Philadelphia, which is supposed to be one of the best schools for restaurant schools, right? And she told me that all these chefs, they learn to be chef and they go to all Four Seasons and they go to all these fancy places and they become chefs. And she said, all the chefs, while cooking, they all sweat. It's like 80% of their time is just, this is how they are.
What vibration is
Yeah,
horrible.
Exactly. I was so shocked. She says, yeah, that's like the norm. sometimes it's like, that time and that place when, is the time that you just take out all your frustrations in life.
As you chop.
Why? They're creative people, why wouldn't they be swearing?
That doesn't.
And that, it's a
Chef
time.
on television, right? Screaming and using. That's for television.
But this is what I was told by somebody who studies in the restaurant. So, I mean, I don't know how true it is, but I'm sure she was telling me. So she says it's a very well good thing. So we have to ask some chefs who are here.
I'm sure as Gita to ask when the son is a chef.
So we can ask them. Right? What I'm saying is all these frustrations. So anybody is doing this, any work, wherever you are, you don't have to be seen. You have to interact with people. And how you make those people feel, because you are carrying your own frustrations from some other sources, and people over whom you have power, they become guinea pigs for you to unload. This is how everybody behaves. And as long as you don't see that actually this is not going to be in your self-interest and change, you will keep on creating distortions in this world. And then feel what? Exactly. You not only create...
Nobody respects me.
Exactly.
I don't know my what.
It is quite amazing, because what you are doing is creating distortions which are too many. But how are you feeling? As Nita says, I'm a victim, nobody respects me. Look at that, how far we are from the truth. How far we are, because we have created a mental picture where you are a victim and people are not respecting you. But what are you doing? Okay, so this is how we all live. We live with the mental picture that we have created, which sometimes is so not corresponding to reality. So amanitvam is breaking on these bubbles within which we live and become an authentic human being. Clarity. All the entire Vedanta is not advice-based, it's all clarity. You see things clearly. It's all these behaviors come from confusion. And as long as that confusion remains, no matter how much advice you give, the person is helpless. When you give clarity, the person is able to help himself. Then the teacher doesn't have to tell you do this, you do this, you do it naturally. That is the difference between a teacher and an advisor. The teacher talks at a different level, showing you what is. Right? So therefore, this is what we say amanitva. The second thing is adambhitva. Dambha, pretense, is something which is also what? Dambha is, manitvam is wanting respect for things that I think I have achieved and what I think who I am. Dambha is wanting to be recognized for something that you don't even have. So that means you are adding what? One more level of distortion. One more. Why do we all, see, each one of us carries a little bit of a facade, and that all of us do, and this is again something that you have to understand, that you can't just go and talk about your real self to everyone and reveal 100% of yourself to everyone. To a certain extent, that certain amount of facade is rational, it is good and healthy, right? But if that facade becomes you, and you never can be an authentic, real person, what is the problem with that? That pretense means what? I want to be seen in a certain way, which I am actually not. And I try to convince people that I am like that, when actually I know that I am not like that. Where does that need come from?
Low self-esteem.
Excellent. It comes from low self-esteem, right? That I feel I'm no good, and if I present myself as I am, nobody will like me. So if I present myself a little bit inflated, then people will like me. A lot of
Maybe I will also like you.
Exactly. Excellent. True. I myself will also like me. Right? So that there comes this need for pretense. Sometimes one has to see the societies that we have created, they actually reinforce this whole thing of pretense. And this is why Rajan reminded me of this example that I gave, which actually the source of that example is Navrata.
Is it? That's a good
So,
analogy.
yeah. So there is an example which I gave, and he loved that example. But so he reminded me this time you didn't say that example.
Anything to do with it.
So there is I mean, now I have to say Navrata too, otherwise I say somebody too. So there was this child who had called, I don't know if you remember it or not, but I remember this example you gave. There was a child who had, in school, she had said that I have a birthday party, so please, all the kids were invited. So after 2 weeks, the party got cancelled. Said, sorry, I'm not having this party. So then one of the mothers was just curious as to why this party got cancelled. So spoke to mother of this child who was going to have a party. And that mother said, you know what, my child tells me that when I go to my friends' places, they have beautiful big houses. And my house is small. So how my friends, when they come and see my home, they would feel, what? That what is this? So she said she was ashamed to bring her friends and show her house. And this is why the party was cancelled. A child. A child of maybe, I'm
I think she was
assuming
15.
15 years old. A child of 15 years old carries this whole burden that I will not be respected, people will laugh at me, people will whatever look down upon me if I don't have this fancy house that we all have. Right? So next time, now the child has to feel good exactly about oneself. So what will the child do? What are the coping mechanisms? The child feels bad. What are the coping mechanisms? How does the child actually doesn't really know, is good, at least she told mother the real reason. Generally the children don't even verbalize how they really feel. They just stay with that feeling and then they have to find ways to cope with it. So how would they cope with it? What would they do? Think about it. How would they cope with it?
Create stories.
Create stories.
Also.
Exactly.
Imagine illusions.
Exactly.
And believe that it is so.
Exactly. This is a very important thing. You imagine things. As a child, you just imagine things. You imagine things and you start then telling yourself, because you need to feel good about yourself too. So you imagine stories and you start believing in the stories. And then you start presenting yourself as the stories. So therefore, now, if you have to tell the child not to be pretentious, then what, if for example the parents find out that the child is, let's say, not presenting things accurately, then what do parents do? Scold them. You're a liar, and look at this. And So what are you doing to this child who's feeling inadequate? Is feeling less than everybody else. Now, even the parent is saying, you're a liar, you're no good. Because the parent is giving what this morality lesson. You think the child is going to take that morality lesson and change the behavior? Not at all. He's going to feel worse. He's going to feel more insecure. Broken down.
Confirms us.
Confirms and reinforces. Exactly, I'm no good. Before, I felt no good. Now my parents are also telling me I'm no good. So that means it gets reinforced. And what parents think they are doing? Disciplining the child and giving them values. You see how much out of all goodwill we create societies which are all dysfunctional societies.
I want to share with you guys on this topic. My personal experience with my parents, my father. I remember when I was a kid and we got to go in a wedding. There was a party away from London and all that. So I didn't have shoes, proper shoes. So I told my father I'm not going. I don't have any shoes, I can't go home, I'm feeling shy. I have an old shoe here. So my father said, okay, sit. We go to the wedding, somebody is inviting you. He is inviting home, he is inviting you. So he will be happy to see you coming. What your wedding is not important. So he told me one thing which I remember all my life. Honor and shame from no condition rise. Act well your part, your honor lies.
Sorry, what was
Sorry,
that?
come again.
Well, your
Sorry.
part.
Come again.
Honor and shame from no condition rise. Act well your part, all your honor lies. So he said that only they want to see the yes, the rash has come. They are not saying see what you are wearing and what it is.
People don't even notice, right? I mean, sometimes people do, but to who, I mean, even if they say, okay, now this is, well, it's, their mental life is preoccupied with millions of things, they're not going to dwell on that, right? But it's you who's suffering from complex, absolutely.
So from then onwards, I never was shy about anything. I would wear anything and go.
Wonderful.
My story is slightly different. Whenever people went on holiday, I would come back and they would ask where you went. So I went to India. And because I had gone to school in Paris and studied there, and they asked where, so I said I was in Riviera on the Riviera. Everyone always thought that Donald went to south of France for his holidays. After school, we all gone on a holiday. We go on to Gujarat. And I knew that there was one sanitarium, Parsi sanitarium, where we used to occasionally go on summer holiday. And then I said, remember, I used to tell you I used to go to Riviera on the remember that we used to say that. Salah, this is Riviera on the
I see sanitarium number less than we
It's no less than lovely. You can hear this.
You can go to live stream and you do
Live stream.
live stream. Go to spiritual, then go to Nima, and you'll be able to get it for the next 7 days.
No, that's
No, I
it.
can't look at it.
After that, yeah. After that, it goes in.
Guru
Go
Nima.
to spiritual, go to Nima.
Ah, okay.
You are not an internal center. Internal center. And you should project your goals as well.
No, no.
I know that.
At least you can read what I can't read half what I write.
Everybody's notes that we put together to Quran.
But I was
You
thinking
know,
you
we
should
went for
get it.
that retreat and I can't remember Nandini, is it?
Nandita.
Nandita was not there for that. Nandita, I think, you know, little Shivan one.
Yeah, Nandita.
Yeah.
Nandita.
Yeah, so she does that. When she misses a class, they all take notes. So she takes everybody's notes and goes through all
Why
of
don't
them.
you
puts
just
it
do it on your laptop straight away?
I'm too far away to take that fast. This much is
It
enough.
will become so easy for me.
I know. In Xerox, they send with you. It's faster than going.
Yeah, Baba was telling me that Gita's notes are superb.
We have a walking encyclopedia, that's you.
Let's stick to the
Okay. So, parents have to tackle this issue. And this is where it reminds me, I read somewhere of a speech, I think in Bangalore, in one of these startups which became a huge success. The CEO was invited at IIM Ahmedabad and he was giving a speech. And he started his speech by saying, I come from a very modest background. My father was a government officer and we hardly had anything when I was growing up. And I saw all my friends had TVs and, this is a few years ago when he was a child. And they had nice houses, they had cars, they had everything. And as a child, I used to always see what they had and what I had. And what I had was hardly anything. And there were other government officers who were also well off. So obviously, they were taking bribes because their salaries could not afford because, So therefore, the child used to always be in that state of dissatisfaction. So he used to always cry and feel small and everything. One day, his father called him. And he said, you know what? He says, but why this one has and I don't have? He says, this is the salary I have. He told him, with this salary, I have to what? Educate you, I have to buy whatever food to eat, I have to pay maintenance of the house. I have all of this. Now, you show me where is the money left to indulge you. You show me. Now the child, that means it gets the child thinking. The child is what? Engaged and what is a participant in finding a solution. We don't do that. We don't involve the person at all. We just give orders. We tell them, I can't afford it. That's all. And then that's over. And he says, now, then the child is asking, but how? They are also working in your office. So how are they doing it? The child is engaged. So then he said, yeah, their salary is also like that. So he said, how are they doing it? He said, okay, now if you want to afford all of this, then what they have to do what? They have to take bribes. So now, I also have a choice. The father explains to the child, I also have a choice. I can also be like them and I can also do it. Then the child says, but why don't you do it then? And he said, I can do it, but when I come back home, when I have cheated, I will not be able to sleep quietly. There will always be this feeling of guilt that I will come home with. And that guilt will also what? If I do once, I do twice, I do 3 times, that guilt will what? Keep on increasing. And that guilt increases, and also then there is a fear of what? Getting caught. So I will accumulate guilt. I will accumulate fear of being caught. Then I would myself fall in my self-esteem, because what I know to be right, I am not doing it. So that means I'm going to feel I can't even live up to some basic values that I understand. So he says that I can, with these feelings, guilt, fear, low self-esteem, accumulating that, I can acquire cars, I can acquire nice houses. But in my vision, what is more important is what? Have a guilt-free, fear-free life with a good self-esteem where I can be what? Without those big luxurious items. So this is a choice. And he says, when I make that choice, I'm also creating what? A legacy. When I make you understand that I have made that choice and why I have made the choice that I have, I'm leaving you with certain values which is so much more important than surrounding yourself with everything that your friends have. The child understood. That CEO at IIM said from that day he never asked his father why I don't have this, why I don't have that. He says, I'm not only living by that, but I'm passing on those values to you. And that passing on is far more important than passing on of TV and this and that gadgets. And that child grew up with a good self-esteem. Because he says, hey, my father is not just somebody, before what was his perception? My father is nobody because everybody has that and my father doesn't have it. Now, what was his perception? My father is great. My father can stand by things, what he believes in. He lives by principle, which others are sacrificing. I'm much more proud to be who I am. And I'm totally okay with living without all these amenities that we think
But I
are
still feel kids earlier were more simple. Now our kids would not accept an answer so easily like this. You know, because they are so into this society thing now.
But what I'm saying is that constant talking, see, it's not maybe one time talking, but it's a constant feedback, giving different stories, different, presenting it differently. This is how you inculcate values in a child. You don't tell this is how you should be. Our whole method of communication is we create ideas. You be like this, you be like that, you be like. You don't engage the child and reveal what you are and why you are doing what you are doing. It's all top down and tell.
You see, sometimes you feel even if you can afford it, you don't want to give it because you want to keep them that you can't get everything that you want. This is the thing that life is not about getting everything you want, but it's very difficult.
But then again, you are teaching them lessons by. I think one has to change the method.
They feel if you can afford it, why can't you do it? It's a thing. And sometimes you can do it, but you don't want to do it. Only just set the values that there's not everything that you want you have to do.
Not only that, you can point your finger at you. You go with this 5-star restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, where is this short issue?
Exactly.
How do you address that?
See, now let's not get into the details that I will talk later because each situation is different and what the child wants and whether you say yes or not, it depends. Right? What I'm saying, the point that I'm making is that we need to communicate, we need to find effective way of communicating which is not in form of an advice. It's not like making decisions for the child and telling them this is what the decision I've made and I'm doing it for your good and you just have to follow my decision. This is how we communicate to the child. We have to change that communication style. You think you are doing it for their good, but unless they are convinced that it is for their good, they will always resent it. According to you, it is for their good, but according to them, it's not for their good. So if you want to make that other person behave according to how you want, it is what? Make the child understand how it is for their good. Because until you make that child understand that, the child is always going to be resentful. Because you made the decision according to what you think is good for them, which they don't think is good for them. So that means this is where we have this amazing brain of 3 pounds where we can find all these extremely creative solutions. We have our own patterns of communication and we are caught in that paradigm.
That's why the child may feel my parents are always like this, so let me not tell them only.
So this is where, what is very interesting is some of my students, they come to my class and they think that they are learning so much, right? So the first thing that they have in mind is what?
Let me tell the child.
Exactly.
Right?
That is like, okay, now
the dad is the child.
now they go home and pour it all out to the child.
Or the spouse, if the spouse is not coming.
Absolutely.
Someone do you do that?
I try to. After a couple of months of Gita classes, I learned.
And what does the child do? Here goes, my mom is starting again this passion. Switch off, they switch off. Right?
My mother used to do that after she went for one of these classes. In that class, they had this, they said, always listening mode. I said, you're putting everyone into already listening mode by giving only passion.
Exactly. Nobody likes to be what? Subject to somebody else's passion. This is why I'm so proud to say that this lecture I don't give you passion. Hopefully not. Right? I just make you use your own thinking and develop the whole infrastructure of thinking. So that you can think beyond your narrow ways of doing things. I don't have specific solution to, okay, now I have this particular problem, solve it tomorrow. I give you the whole different infrastructure to make your decisions from. A whole new way of understanding the world, engaging in it, understanding it differently. And when you really understand what I'm really trying to say, all these things will become a piece of cake. You will find your own solutions. Because there is this whole big creativity that is endowed to you, which is unutilized. Because you are so set in your way of doing things and thinking that this is the only way. And you are so convinced that it is for good of whoever that you are interacting with. So I am making you come out of that paradigm and making you see all these different nuances. And if you begin to utilize your mind differently, you will find solutions. But as Bhagavad Gita very rightly says, what? Karmani eva adhikarahate mahareshu. Because you have changed the ways. If you expect that now tomorrow your child will change, that's not going to happen either. Because what the child is today is a result of all the inputs that you have given for what? Last 20 years, 10 years, 8 years, depending upon how old your child is. And now you have changed in last 1 year and you are giving different inputs. You think the child can erase whatever the child has accumulated for 8 years in like 1 day? It's impossible. It's impossible. So that means when you begin to engage differently, you have to continue to find what? Ways to engage differently. When the child is going to change is something which is what? Going to be decided by you. Can you say from tomorrow you change? No. You let it happen according to the laws of the cause and effect. The very fact that you are doing things differently will contribute to that change. But when that change is going to come, in what manner, to what degree, you can't control. But what is our whole thing? Wanting to control that. And when things don't happen according to my expectations, then what? I again get disappointed. Oh, it's not working. Then I label that person, oh, that person will never change. Or it's that person's karma, or it's my karma. So we get into so many dysfunctional messages which are highly self-limiting and don't do enough proactively to achieve what we want. So my whole thing in life is fun. If this hasn't worked, let me try the other way. What am I doing? I'm expanding myself. If I say, this has not worked, it will never work.
End of story.
End of story. The helplessness. Along with that end of story sets in what? Helplessness. Limiting yourself. Not applying your creativity. Because you are creating your own self-boundaries by giving the messages. Because it has not worked for 6 months, it will never work. This person is, then we further label this person is unchangeable. They don't change. There is no human being who doesn't change. There is no human being. Even look at your own life, from the time that you were a teenager to the time that you were in 30s to the time you were in 40s, how many times you've changed? How many priorities have changed? Change is a rule. Nobody can avoid it. So if you create a mindset where you say, this will always be like this, are you in touch with reality? You're not in touch. And in fact, when you focus on the actions and creative ways that you can influence that change, then where, from that helplessness, where have you changed? In engagement, proactive engagement. Life becomes fun. If this hasn't worked, let me try. Let me use my brain. Let's see if that works. That doesn't work. Okay, let me try. What the very process is enjoyable. Because you're not giving, when you want to control the outcome and it doesn't get what? It doesn't happen the way you want, then you create what? The picture of helplessness, victim, failure, and that will keep you what? Restricted within that paradigm. And you have to come out of that paradigm. And the only way to come out of that paradigm is to challenge yourself. I used to tell, the kids, they love these video games. Why do they love these video games? They play this car, even we used to play these car games. Right? In those car games, what happens? You are driving a car and from the other side, what? Cars are coming. And what do you need to do?
Navigate.
You need to navigate. And this car is coming from here, then you just move here, but by the time that what? There's a car coming there, then you have to, and they love it. Right? Because constantly what they get fixated by saying that, okay, now this is what, even if it bangs, what do you have to do? The cars are continuing to come, and what do you need to do? Can you sit and cry and say, oh, it banged? How will you play the game? You need to be constantly what? Alive, and you constantly need to navigate. Life is like that. Either you can just say, oh, this is too big and I'm helpless and I can't do anything and people don't change, and then that paradigm which will make you more and more helpless. Or you can say, hey, situations sometimes I bang, I'm not able to, but let me find another way. Let me see what I can do now. It puts you in that proactive mode. Don't be afraid of challenges that life brings. Because each challenge is an opportunity for you to what? And become bigger than that challenge. And then you are free. And then it's fun. Because each challenge tests what? Your wisdom and your capacity to deal with it. Without getting into the self-defeating modes, self-limiting modes, self-pitying modes. Right? That's when you unleash all the creativity. This 3-pound of brain which is given to you is the greatest gift from the universe. You can apply it in amazing ways. How much of the brain we actually utilize? Nirmala was saying. How much of the brain capacity that we actually realize? What?
Very small.
Very small. Very less. Even the genius.
I think a genius would be at 20%.
Exactly.
I don't think
So
so.
that
Genius
means-
they say is 40%. And I hear that somewhere at about 3 or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know the exact figure, but it's
Something very
very
much lower than
small.
20%.
Exactly. So even from that 3%, if you move to 8%, you're superhuman. I mean, you're good. Right? So that means you have to make that initiative. What do? As we grow, we make it narrower and narrower and narrower. And the burden of that one story that I'm telling myself, it occupies 80% of my mind. When it occupies 80% of my mind, and I keep on repeating it, it's like a tape. It keeps on in different ways, the
How do
same
you
story.
break that habit?
So exactly.
If you're continuously thinking about one issue or probably going to make a mountain of a molehill, or you have a mountain and you have a
Exactly. The only real way to do it is that, fill your brain with all this wisdom. In light of which, that 80% which is occupied will shrink to 5%.
The value of that will not be that
Exactly.
low.
This is why, because if you don't have anything else to fill your brain with, then what? It is empty. Nobody can handle empty mind. So you need to fill it up with the wisdom. In light of which you can't eliminate the events. You can't totally eliminate the impact those events have had on you. That also you can't eliminate. But you can put them in perspective and free the rest to engage in the world totally. That choice.
You understand Indra's, then the importance will reduce automatically. What we are giving with such a big,
Absolutely. And then when you understand karmaniyeva adhikaraste ma kuleshu kadachana, then you say, okay, now let me find solutions rather than sulking about the outcome. So many things will change. This Gita is an extraordinary book. It's extraordinary.
Doing constant chanting of Gayatri.
It helps because you are. Yeah. This is Jayata. Yeah, I saw that. So, Gayatri Mantra also helps a lot because every morning you are praying for clarity. You are praying for clarity of thinking because life is nothing but a series of decisions. And every decision that you make has repercussions on how your future is going to be. And if you are going to make and assess that situation with your limited mind, which is highly distorted, then how is going to be the result? How is going to be the action? Not very good. And then if the action is inappropriate, how is going to be the result? So that's why you try whatever you can with your own free will to expand your mind so that you can see things differently. But you also then ask help from the universe for expansion of that mind. Leading it in the right direction. Naha dhiyaha prachodayat. Our minds, not only your mind, everybody else's mind. Naha, our minds. Why? Because we live in a society, if one person wants to be good, but if everybody else around is all confused, can that person really be good? for not only your well-being and your clarity of thinking, you also pray for everybody else's clarity of thinking. And in that, you see your benefit. When I pray for your clarity, I see my benefit. This is Vedic vision. For somebody else's clarity, I see that how it ultimately benefits me. Because I have to interact with the universe. If only I am clear and if others are not clear, I work in a system, Indra's net.
When the focus becomes on us changing, sharing our clarity with others and trying to make them change rather than us changing also.
So in fact, you are saying, you are also including yourself. You are saying Naha means we, not only they. It means we.
Give us clarity and give them clarity.
Us, give me clarity and also give others clarity. And my well-being is defined by my clarity and everybody else's clarity. What is, if I'm looking at the world with little smallness of my inadequacy, somebody else's clarity will do what? Create inferiority complex. Somebody else's brilliance will create inferiority complex. Jealousy in me. It will make me feel, and then I'll put the other person down. Through this prayer, what am I doing?
Empowering both.
I'm empowering both. I am able to enjoy the clarity of others, and I can say my own clarity and my own well-being is defined by that person's clarity and my clarity, both. It's a very, very fundamental shift in the way I interact with the universe. When others' well-being,
Your voices is very just.
right? I define my own well-being by what? Seeing the well-being of others and enjoying. Because otherwise, well-being of others creates smallness in me. Dissatisfaction. If I am not secure, here I grow to the extent that I can enjoy everybody's accomplishments, everybody's clarity. And I can see how I can benefit from that rather than feeling small. Scales of difference in every day. Okay? So the whole way I engage in the world changes. And all the pretense and all that just drops. I become that authentic, genuine person who's free from all these loads. Somebody else's achievement, I can celebrate that. Why should it make me feel less? I'm not jealous towards Einstein. I can celebrate Einstein's genius. So, if I can celebrate Einstein's genius when he was maybe using 40%, this next person who's next to me is slightly smarter than me, I can also equally celebrate that. Why should I feel small and insignificant and feel jealous? What is my need to pretend? Right? So that becomes the very basis of you. The more you undo all these complexes, the more you free your mental space for enjoying things. With all the complexes that we hold, we can't enjoy things. Knowing and that authenticity in your life. Then the third one is ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence, which we will see next time. पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय
she's in school. And Rahul also she chose so she's really obviously
Right, see, this is what happens. Miss out on things.
older one is trying to
What are you there for?
Still a learning position.
very scary, very scary. You know, this is what